In the biting chill of a Westchester County winter, an affluent enclave just beyond the metropolitan pulse of New York City, Patricia Wilson stood motionless beside the floor-to-ceiling window of her stately white mansion, observing the snow as it descended delicately upon the manicured garden. A former hospital administrator now ensconced in a life of refined retirement, her discerning eyes bore an inscrutable shadow, suggesting disquiet beneath the surface. "Mother, I'm pregnant." Those words, once uttered, seemed to rupture the serenity of the moment. Patricia's expression became immobile, frozen in disbelief. After a decade of exhaustive fertility interventions, her eldest daughter, Jennifer, had at last conceived. This revelation would serve as the catalytic spark that illuminated, and ultimately exacerbated, the festering dysfunction within their family. Jennifer, a disciplined and methodical investment banking analyst with an annual remuneration of $150,000, resided in an opulent Manhattan apartment. Throughout her life, she had strived, sometimes desperately, to align with her mother's exacting expectations. Her commitment to familial decorum and emotional stability had long dictated her life's course. In stark contrast, her younger sister Ashley, an unmarried mother of a 3-year-old son named Lucas, had become increasingly parasitic, both financially and emotionally, upon their mother. Exhibiting signs of psychological instability, Ashley remained entrenched in Patricia's household, her dependency deepening with each passing day. "Oh, is that so?" Patricia responded, her tone tinged with icy detachment. From the corner of the elegantly appointed living room, little Lucas looked up from his toys and innocently posed a question that instantaneously altered the atmosphere. "Mommy, will the baby in the tummy end up like me?" The simplicity of his inquiry struck a discordant chord, revealing layers of unspoken dread. The sum in question was $2 million, the inheritance bequeathed by the late matriarch, Eleanor Wilson, whose will stipulated that the entirety of her estate would be awarded to the first descendant to bear a child. At present, Ashley had the legal upper hand, her son Lucas standing as tangible proof, but Jennifer's pregnancy posed a destabilizing threat to that entitlement. With her husband Michael, a chief financial officer of a prominent tech firm, Jennifer enjoyed a stable, dual-income lifestyle that amounted to a combined $400,000 per annum. Michael, calm and rational, was unwavering in his devotion to Jennifer and prioritized her well-being above all. Then, in Jennifer's 7th month of pregnancy, Patricia, whose mental equilibrium had become increasingly tenuous after ceasing her medication for bipolar disorder, proposed an extravagant baby shower with an unsettling cheerfulness. "I'll handle the arrangements," she announced. "I've secured a private dining salon at the Belmont. It will be a celebration befitting the occasion." The suggestion, though outwardly celebratory, bore the hallmarks of coercion. Her controlling nature disguised itself in forced enthusiasm. Ashley offered a faint smile as her mother named the venue. Beneath her placid exterior simmered a malignant possessiveness, enabled by Patricia's financial support, derived from pension funds and stock dividends. Ashley's sense of entitlement had mutated into something darker. Jennifer felt a peculiar apprehension coil within her. The joy of long-awaited conception was gradually eclipsed by the ominous undercurrents swirling through her familial landscape. The descent into psychological torment began 1 week later with a late-night phone call. In her high-rise apartment overlooking a snow-blanketed Manhattan, Jennifer hesitated before answering. "Terminate the pregnancy." Her mother's voice was devoid of emotion, its tone colder than the wind rattling her windows. Thus began a campaign of relentless psychological aggression. Patricia's deteriorating mental state manifested in increasingly vitriolic midnight tirades. Her former poise as a senior hospital executive had all but disintegrated. "This child will annihilate our family structure. Ashley and Lucas suffice." The cumulative stress of these nocturnal diatribes began to erode Jennifer's physical and emotional well-being. Despite being in the ostensibly stable second trimester, her health began to falter. Michael urged her to sever communication with her mother, but Jennifer's emotional tether, nurtured by gratitude for a decade of support through infertility, prevented her from fully withdrawing. Ashley's machinations, meanwhile, were more insidious. Utilizing social media, she disseminated a web of veiled accusations disguised as sympathetic commentary. High-risk pregnancy motivated by financial gain. Marriage in crisis. Psychological instability in expectant mother. Inheritance-driven conception. These damaging insinuations spread like toxic spores. Among Westchester's well-heeled housewives, gossip burgeoned into scandal. Afternoon teas and manicured parlors devolved into whispered conjectures about the Wilsons. That family is fractured, her sister's child shows signs of abuse, the mother is clearly unwell, and now they're warring over a fortune. Truth and fiction intermingled, making discernment all but impossible. Anonymous denunciations were submitted to Jennifer's employer, an elite investment bank. Accusations ranged from non-disclosure of her pregnancy to alleged romantic entanglements at work and psychological instability. The Human Resources Department was inundated. However, thanks to Michael's unwavering advocacy and Jennifer's unimpeachable professional record, the storm eventually abated. But Lucas's predicament deteriorated. Preschool teachers began reporting troubling behaviors. Heightened episodes of crying, unexplained bruises, unprovoked aggression, nocturnal panic attacks. These were unmistakable red flags, signaling distress within the child's domestic environment. Even a prestigious preschool with a tuition of $2,500 per month could not shield him from escalating trauma. "You are no longer welcome here. You are no longer family." This unilateral pronouncement from Patricia marked Jennifer's formal ostracization. It also severed her ability to monitor Lucas, whom she increasingly feared was the victim of abuse. She contemplated contacting Child Protective Services but hesitated, unwilling to act without irrefutable evidence. Patricia's instability grew more pronounced with each passing day. On occasion, late-night screams and the eerie sound of children crying would drift from her mansion. But when neighbors lodged concerns, Patricia's social capital and polished facade rendered their complaints impotent. Discipline is an essential element of child rearing, she'd insist, cloaking abuse in the veneer of traditionalist values. The inheritance rights to this house belongs solely to Ashley's family. Patricia made this declaration unannounced in Jennifer's Manhattan apartment. Adorned in a pristine designer suit, she exuded the composed dignity of her former career, yet her words were steeped in delusion and latent hostility. "Your child is an interloper. The inheritance rightfully belongs to Ashley and her son." Soon thereafter, Jennifer began receiving anonymous packages at her office, macabre tokens including baby shoes stained with crimson paint, torn ultrasound images, and threatening notes. Despite filing reports, law enforcement made little headway, citing insufficient evidence. Then, 2 months before her expected delivery, an inexplicable reversal occurred. Patricia and Ashley's behavior transformed overnight. The persecution ceased. A disturbing calm settled over them. "The arrangements for the baby shower are finalized. Invitations have been dispatched." An opulent event at the Belmont was now imminent. The $200 per head menu, the champagne tower, the dessert bar. On the surface, everything projected the image of familial bliss. Beneath it all, however, seethed an unseen maelstrom. Ashley's demeanor turned saccharine. "Your baby will be so beautiful. Let's raise them together, like a real family." Gradually, the harrowing reality began to emerge from beneath the surface of the elegant facade. As Lucas's sleeve was inadvertently rolled up, a multitude of contusions and bruises became plainly visible, mapping a silent testimony to prolonged and unspoken suffering. Gasps swept through the assembled crowd, and the expressions adorning the guests' faces shifted, from alarmed confusion to a dawning, horrified comprehension. "Summon an ambulance. Notify the authorities at once." At the desperate cry of a bystander, the grand entrance doors were flung open. Security personnel in crisp uniforms surged into the room with urgent precision. Staff members from the Belmont establishment immediately initiated emergency protocols, their movements practiced and swift. Outside, the wailing crescendo of sirens grew louder as crimson and sapphire lights danced across the darkening sky, painting a surreal tableau against the twilight. My grandchild," Patricia's trembling voice, racked with hysteria and disbelief, reverberated hauntingly through the opulent hall. The delicate champagne flute slipped from her hand, crashing to the marble floor in a crystalline explosion that echoed like the toll of a death knell. It was the symbolic collapse of the Wilson family, shattered not by time, but by truth. Paramedics arrived and swiftly yet gently transferred Jennifer onto a stretcher. Michael, his countenance contorted with a volatile blend of anguish and wrath, clutched her hand, unable to mask the storm roiling beneath his polished exterior. Law enforcement officials began meticulously gathering testimonies, moving from guest to guest in a systematic effort to reconstruct the sequence of events. Ashley stood immobilized, cradling her young son in her arms. Her once pristine makeup had dissolved into smeared remnants of pretense, revealing the unvarnished torment and instability that had festered beneath her composed mask for years. Around them, remnants of a shattered celebration lay strewn across the once pristine venue, half-eaten delicacies, broken glass, and the undeniable, grotesque reality of a family unraveling before the public eye. Presbyterian Hospital, Crisis and Fragility. The atmosphere inside the Presbyterian Hospital Emergency Department was unusually tense, charged with an unspoken urgency. Jennifer, having been brought in via ambulance, was swiftly transported to the specialized obstetric unit. In the sterile silence, the rhythmic beeping of the fetal heart monitor offered the only reassurance. "The fetus is stable," the attending physician finally declared. At that confirmation, Michael exhaled deeply, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His designer suit now looked disheveled, his usual composed demeanor completely eroded by the magnitude of the events. 3 officers stood vigil in the hallway, ready to proceed with formal procedures. Meanwhile, the chaos that had unfolded at the Belmont ignited a firestorm across local media and social networks. Within hours, video footage depicting the arrest of Patricia Wilson, long regarded as a reputable philanthropist and former hospital administrator, spread like wildfire. That woman, the one who ran the children's ward? Whispers evolved into scandal as society began to digest the chasm between public persona and private cruelty. Police interrogation, unveiling years of abuse. Inside the sterile walls of the police interrogation facility, Lucas, barely 3 years of age, delivered a statement that left even the most seasoned detectives in stunned silence. "Grandma and Mommy always hit me, they wash me in hot water, lock me in dark rooms." His voice was hauntingly serene, his presence flanked by a child psychologist who dutifully recorded every word for evidentiary preservation. A medical examination confirmed the unimaginable, extensive bruising, burns, and a pattern of injuries too systematic to be coincidental. In an adjacent room, Ashley sat facing investigators, her voice trembled, her justifications unraveling as quickly as her composure. I was just trying to discipline him." But her words rang hollow. The mask of respectability had long since crumbled, revealing the face of a woman who had herself been crushed by trauma. A psychological evaluation soon uncovered a deeply tragic cycle. Ashley, too, had suffered sustained abuse at the hands of Patricia for years. "Your mother has been under treatment for bipolar disorder for over 2 decades, a hospital administrator confirmed. Medical records and psychiatric history revealed that Patricia had ceased taking her prescribed medications the previous year. Behind the accolades and achievements lay an unresolved tempest of mental illness and unacknowledged trauma. Further investigation uncovered a sealed incident from a decade earlier, a violent altercation at Patricia's previous place of employment. Suppressed by her considerable influence, the case had quietly disappeared. "I only wanted the best for my children. Everything I did was to protect the inheritance," Patricia muttered during her interrogation, her logic disfigured by obsession. Searches of her personal study unearthed a trove of evidence, anonymous slanderous correspondence, fabricated reports, and most horrifying of all, video documentation of Lucas's mistreatment. Yet the crescent marks from her own fingernails on her palms betrayed the volatility bubbling beneath her smile. The night before the celebration, Jennifer received a voice message from Lucas. His tiny face appeared on her phone screen, clad in white pajamas resembling hospital scrubs. "Aunt Jenny. Mommy and Grandma said something scary. Grandma said everyone would be happy if the baby went away." That chilling confession marked the overture to a looming catastrophe. On the day of the baby shower, 30 elegantly attired guests convened in the private salon of the Belmont. Champagne sparkled beneath the crystal chandelier, and gourmet hors d'oeuvres arrived in meticulous succession. Tiffany blue gift boxes adorned the tables. Patricia, donned in an immaculate Chanel ensemble, welcomed the guests with poise. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my daughter Jennifer's long-awaited pregnancy." The room murmured polite approval. A miracle after 10 years, Michael must be so proud. Yet Jennifer, radiant in a pale blush maternity gown, sat beside Michael with a lingering air of trepidation. Ashley, clad in a black cocktail dress, clutched Lucas's hand. The boy was eerily subdued. Patricia stood once more. Now, the mother's speech. Her hands trembled, her eyes gleamed with unhinged fervor. "This child." Silence fell. "One grandchild from the younger daughter is sufficient." The scream shattered the veneer of civility. "Terminate this pregnancy, now." She lunged, her foot struck Jennifer's abdomen, screams erupted, A second kick followed as Patricia lost all control. "Stop!" Michael moved to shield his wife, but the chaos had fully ignited. Crystal flutes shattered, frantic voices filled the room. In the midst of the frenzy, Ashley smirked, calculated, complicit. Then Lucas spoke, clear and chilling. "Grandma, are you going to hit again like you do with Mommy?" Ashley turned, panicked. "Lucas, stop." But he continued, his voice trembling. "Grandma and Mommy, they always hit me, it hurts." And with that, the room's fragile illusion collapsed. Revelation and collapse. Hospital room, tears and consequences. Back at the hospital, Jennifer received the full report, her eyes welled with silent tears. The unborn child was safe, but the damage inflicted upon the family's soul felt irreparable. Legal measures proceeded with precision. A court-issued restraining order forbade Patricia and Ashley from initiating any form of contact with Jennifer or Lucas. Patricia was remanded to a psychiatric institution. Ashley, after admitting to her crimes, entered a protective rehabilitation facility. Lucas, now in the care of Child Protective Services, was granted specialized psychological treatment to begin his path toward healing. All legal mechanisms are being enacted to ensure the child's future safety and emotional well-being, a caseworker confirmed solemnly. 1 week later, the redistribution of legacy. 7 days following the tumultuous events, the Inheritance Council convened to re-evaluate the terms of the late Eleanor Wilson's estate. In light of the abuse, Patricia and Ashley's claims to the $2 million inheritance were irrevocably nullified. The committee unanimously agreed to repurpose the estate as the founding capital for a charitable institution, the Wilson Foundation for Child Protection. A new dawn. Within her private room at Presbyterian Hospital, Jennifer rested her hand gently atop her swelling abdomen. In the aftermath of devastating revelations, something new persisted, a fragile, persistent life. Outside her window, birds soared through the warming spring air, signaling rebirth. Moments later, a nurse entered the room with a small envelope. "Lucas wanted you to have this," she said softly. Inside, a child's handwriting formed an innocent, powerful message. "I'll be a big brother to Aunt Jenny's baby." Weeks later, premature cries filled the delivery room. Twin girls had arrived, Emily and Sophia. Their names honored both legacy and love, an amalgamation of Eleanor's sacred name and Michael's late mother's. The soft warmth of spring poured through the hospital room, wrapping the family in a moment of serene joy. Michael's relatives arrived to celebrate. Absent were Patricia and Ashley. Instead, there was only peace, recovery and redemption. At the state psychiatric facility, Patricia had finally begun stabilizing under a structured treatment regimen. Confined initially to isolation, she gradually joined group therapy sessions. During one private discussion, she spoke aloud the realization she had long suppressed. "I wanted control, but what I called love was really fear, fear of losing everything." It was the beginning of a long and uncertain road toward self-reckoning. Ashley, too, was undergoing her own metamorphosis at a self-sufficiency center. "Mother's abuse broke me, and I took that out on Lucas." Vocational programs and therapy sessions became her lifeline. With determination, she committed herself to earning an accounting certification, motivated not by redemption alone, but by the hope of one day being worthy of her son's pride. A new family emerges. Lucas's transition to a specialized child protection facility marked the start of a healing chapter. "Good morning, Lucas. How are you feeling today?" his therapist asked gently. Gradually, laughter began to replace silence. Soon after, the court approved Jennifer and Michael as Lucas's temporary guardians. "We'll keep him safe," Jennifer whispered. In their home, the melodic sounds of infant cries and Lucas's innocent joy filled the space once haunted by betrayal. The inheritance was reborn, not in wealth, but in purpose. If this foundation can shield even one child from harm, Jennifer's proposal for the Wilson Family Foundation passed without opposition. Moving forward, Patricia, although estranged, continued her treatment in silence, offering only one plea to the universe: "Let my grandchildren grow in happiness." Ashley remained steadfast in her studies. "I want to be the kind of mother Lucas can one day be proud of." A peaceful Sunday, the first chapter of renewal. On a tranquil Sunday afternoon, sunlight bathed the terrace of Jennifer's new residence overlooking Central Park. Lucas stood beside the cribs, peering in. Emily and Sophia, I'll protect you forever. Michael captured the moment with his camera. It was a photograph of endurance, a portrait of light emerging from the deepest shadows. In Jennifer's arms, the twins slept without fear. Outside, the gentle sway of trees foretold the arrival of a new season. Though born from pain and devastation, a resilient family had emerged. This was the true beginning,